What's up traders? In this video, I'll be performing a market forecast on EUR/USD. So stay tuned. Now this video is going to serve as my outlook for EUR/USD for the month of September 2025. As always, my intention with these videos is to show you guys how I establish a directional bias and how I go about identifying potential areas to trade from based on that directional bias. I focus on the weekly, daily, and 4-hour timeframes to give you guys a medium to long-term view of what I am anticipating to happen next on this pair so that the analysis I share with you guys here remains relevant for a much longer period of time. However, with that being said, this process can also be applied to your intraday and lower time frames as well. Now, the last market forecast that we did here on EUR/USD was all the way back at the start of June 2025, when price action was trading in and around this area here. And as you can see, we have had a bit more bullish price action come into the market ever since that last video. However, the month of August that has just concluded can only really be described as a month of consolidation, where price action was really just struggling to trade in a sustained direction for prolonged periods of time. We're going to have a much closer look at that when we drop down to our daily and our 4-hour, but we're going to kick things off here on the weekly time frame as we always do. And as you can see, price action is still trading within this larger bearish weekly external range. We have been trading this complex weekly pullback phase ever since the back end of October 2022. There was a period of consolidation around our EQ where price action tried to give us the continuation to target the week low. But as we entered the new year 2025, we saw the introduction of a lot more bullish pressure that pushed price action up, facilitating this complex pullback. Now, as it stands, my weekly internal structure is bullish as it facilitates this complex weekly pullback phase. My most recent internal breakout structure is a bullish one located here. My internal strong low is located here, as this is the starting point of that internal impulsive phase that helped generate that bullish internal breakout structure. At the time of recording this video though, I have yet to see the formation of my internal week high, and I have yet to see the establishment of my new bullish internal range. In previous market forecast videos here on EUR/USD, I had spoken about this weekly supply zone and the potential it had to facilitate the establishment of that new bullish internal range. But the bearish reaction that we got from this weekly supply zone was not enough to help establish that range. And that can be put down to the amount of bullish pressure that was just pushing price action up at that particular point in time. And so now we're in a situation where our internal impulsive phase is taking place. We have yet to see the establishment of our week high, and we have yet to see confirmation that our internal pullback phase has begun. So going into the month of September, what exactly is it that we are anticipating? What exactly is it that we want to be keeping an eye out for? Now, obviously, the overall objective of this weekly time frame is a violation of our weekly week low down here, which sits at 0.95358 roughly. However, in order for price action to get to this level, we will first need to see our internal structure shift from a bullish market state to a bearish market state in order to signal the end of this complex weekly pullback phase and the start of our bearish weekly continuation phase. Before that can happen though, we first need to see the establishment of our new bullish weekly internal range. Now, as price action consolidates in this area, that confirmation could easily occur in the first half of September with just the introduction of some bearish pressure, because price action has effectively been taking out a lot of liquidity that has been sitting above this weekly supply. And that could be enough of a catalyst to introduce a bit more bearishness going into the start of the month. However, if that does not occur and we see just more bullish pressure step into the market, the next main area of interest is going to be this weekly supply zone that sits at the extreme of our bearish weekly external range. This is effectively going to be the last POI where number one, we could potentially see the establishment of our new bullish internal range. But then also number two, the last POI where the bearish weekly continuation phase can originate from. So either we see the establishment of our new bullish internal range before that POI is mitigated, a new internal break, then the mitigation, or we see a prolonged internal impulsive phase up towards that POI, and then initially we will be anticipating the internal pullback before ultimately looking to see a violation of the internal strong low. All of this means that from a weekly time frame point of view, our main directional bias that we're taking from this now is potential bullishness up towards this weekly supply, even though overall we are trading within a bearish external range. And from our weekly time frame, we can now drop down to the daily time frame, which I regard as the internal of my weekly time frame. And here we can see that our daily time frame is currently pointing bullish with our bullish breaker structure located here, our daily strong low located here, which is obviously our weekly internal strong low. And we can see that our daily internal structure is currently pointing bullish as well, as it facilitates the daily impulsive phase that help facilitate this daily bullish breaker structure. And because of the fact that our internal structure is currently pointing bullish, we have yet to see the establishment of our daily week high, i.e. our weekly internal week high. Now, our daily week high will be established when our internal structure shifts from a bullish market state to a bearish market state to signal the end of our impulsive phase and the start of our daily pullback phase. The point at which that occurs is when our internal strong low is violated. Until that internal strong low is violated, we are effectively trading a bullish daily impulsive phase. Now, we have seen a daily internal pullback, and price action has been trying to violate our daily internal week high. But as you can see, ever since the start of August 2025, price action has been consolidating in this area. So from a daily time frame point of view, our directional bias is bullish as we are anticipating a violation of our daily internal week high. We understand that a violation of this internal week high will simply mean that our daily impulsive phase is continuing. If, however, we see the introduction of more bearish pressure into the market, and if we see a violation of our internal strong low, that would signal the end of our daily impulsive phase and the start of our daily pullback phase, allowing us to not only identify our new daily week high, but also allowing us to establish our new bullish daily external range. If that were to occur in the month of September 2025, the main area of interest for me for that daily pullback would be this weekly demand zone in here. This would be the area where I would like to see the daily pullback come into, mitigate, before potentially facilitating our bullish daily continuation phase. Now, I do also want to bring your attention to this demand area in here on the daily time frame, because depending on price delivery during the month of September and depending on how this consolidation area plays out, we could see a scenario where price action tries to violate the internal week high, fails to do so, comes back to interact with this demand zone before potentially giving it another push to violate the internal week high. And if you think about it, not only do we have imbalance that sits just above that area, but at this current moment in time, we're also seeing a buildup of nice liquidity above that POI as well. So again, an area of interest that we can keep an eye on, that we could potentially look to trade from in line with that bullish directional bias, depending on, number one, how this consolidation plays out going into the first week or so of September, but then also depending on how price action interacts with our daily internal week high. And from the daily time frame, we can now drop down to the 4-hour time frame, which I regard as the internal of my daily time frame. And here you can see as well that my 4-hour time frame is also pointing bullish as it trades within this established bullish 4-hour external range. Now, the overall objective of this bullish 4-hour external range is a violation of the 4-hour week high. We did have a pullback into the EQ of this bullish external range, and price action has been attempting to trade up towards that 4-hour week high level. But as you can see, if I bring you guys in just a little bit closer, ever since the start of August 2025, after this initial sharp bullish pressure that came into the market, price action has been consolidating in this area, really struggling to maintain that bullishness up towards this area. So going into the first half of September 2025, we understand that our directional bias is bullish here on EUR/USD on the 4-hour time frame. But we understand as well that price action is also currently consolidating, and this adds a layer of uncertainty to any potential trades that we identify, because when price action consolidates, we see frequent breaks of structure to the upside and to the downside. Realistically, a violation of this internal high here will really open the door for price action to target that week high. If this level stays in place though, we could potentially see a deeper 4-hour pullback phase, potentially down towards these areas here. The reason I say this is because if you focus in on this price action that we had here, you'll notice that we have a break of structure here. This is the starting point of that impulsive phase that generated this break of structure. And this is the point where the pullback originated from after that break of structure. So we currently have a range that sits in here, and this range is a bearish one. Now, as per my own personal analysis, I have this as a micro break of structure. I have this as a micro strong high and a micro weak low. But for the purpose of simplicity, we can view this as a bearish internal break of structure, and we can view this as a bearish internal range. This now means that we have a 4-hour supply zone that sits towards the extreme of this bearish internal range. The consolidation that we have been seeing throughout the month of August has effectively been building up a nice pool of liquidity just below this 4-hour supply zone. And this now means that a mitigation of this 4-hour supply zone has the potential of generating a resumption of this bearish price action to the downside. And if I bring your attention again to this daily demand zone in here, this daily demand zone is this daily demand zone here on the 4-hour time frame. So if price action is to respect this 4-hour supply, and if we are to see the introduction of bearishness into the market, this daily demand would then be that next main area of interest for us, because as we said, we have a nice amount of imbalance that sits above the POI, and we can see that buildup of liquidity above the POI as well. And so notice how, as much as I have a overall objective, which is a violation of this 4-hour week high, I understand that there is the potential that this supply zone could potentially help facilitate maybe a deeper push to this demand, just to grab a bit more liquidity before price action continues higher. And that idea is based on the fact that we have this bearish internal range that price action is effectively currently trading within. The reason this internal range is so exaggerated is because of this high volume bearish pressure that facilitated and that made up the effectively internal impulsive phase that gave us that break. And so this is why we have such a large bearish internal range. The reason I say that a violation of this high will open the door for price action to target the week high is because essentially a violation of this high will signal the end of our pullback and the start of our continuation phase from a technical point of view, as per the rule set. A violation of this low will open the door for a deeper 4-hour pullback down towards either this 4-hour demand zone here or this 4-hour demand zone that sits at the extreme. So a deeper 4-hour pullback and a violation of this area would now mean that this 4-hour demand becomes the next area of interest for us. And so we would then have the opportunity to trade in line with that directional bias down towards this 4-hour demand on our lower time frames. Now, specifically going into the first week of September, this 4-hour supply zone is going to be that next main area of interest for me. This 4-hour supply zone is going to be my next main buy target. And that means that on my lower time frames, my entry time frame for 15 minutes, I can look for potential entry opportunities to trade up towards this area. One that I can already potentially see here on the 4-hour time frame is this 4-hour demand zone that sits in here. We can see that we have a sweep of liquidity, and after that sweep of liquidity, we can see that we have the formation of this 4-hour demand. Now, I am recording this video on Friday, the 29th of August, 2025. The New York session has not closed yet. So by the time you watch this video and by the time the markets close, we may have already seen a mitigation of this 4-hour supply zone, but I'm already liking this 4-hour demand because I have a nice amount of imbalance. I have a bit of liquidity building up above that area. And depending on how the market closes, depending on price delivery going into this new week, we could potentially see either a move like this. We could potentially see a move like this, or we could potentially see a move like this. There are so many different permutations, so many different ways in which the market can ultimately get to its end goal. Your job, though, is to understand all of those different permutations and decide which one you're actually going to place your bets on. So my ultimate hope for September here on EUR/USD is that price action finally breaks out of this consolidation phase. Obviously, because of the fact that we are trading within a bullish 4-hour external range right now, means that the overall objective is a violation of this 4-hour week high. But we do have some nice demand zones further down that price action could potentially look to come into and interact with first before potentially trading higher. So it's going to be very interesting to see what September has in store for us here on EUR/USD. If you found this video helpful, informative, or entertaining in any way, shape, or form, please leave it a like, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on any future content. And as always, I appreciate you guys so much for watching. Speak to you in the next one.